Dr. Gunatilaka.
Thank you, Sadhu. Hello, everyone. My name is Ayesha Pereira, and today we have a very special program planned. Today, we are honored to be joined by Dr. Sarath Gunatilaka. Dr. Gunatilaka is a world-renowned practicing physician, professor, and researcher. Currently, Dr. Gunathilaka is an occupational and family medicine physician at California State University, Long Beach. Prior to this, he has also served as the medical director of the Metropolitan State Hospital in Norwalk for 9 years. He has been a consultant to many international health organizations, including the World Bank, USAID, UNICEF, and the WHO. Dr. Gunathilaka's experience covers a variety of areas, including international public health, occupational and environmental science, health planning, human resource management, family health and nutrition, and quality assurance in healthcare. Additionally, he was a co-principal investigator of bioterrorism via a grant and curriculum development from CSULB, as well as being a consultant on a panel assessing damage to the healthcare sector during the tsunami in Sri Lanka. Dr. Gunathilaka is very well known for his many publications, guest lectures, and consultation services in occupational mental health, disaster management, and international health on local, national, and international levels. He has been widely recognized and awarded for his vast work. Dr. Gunathilaka has received many awards, such as Excellence in Public Health Practice by the Southern California Public Health Association in 2007. In 2011, Dr. Gunathilaka was awarded and praised by the government of Sri Lanka for his aid to the Sri Lankan healthcare sector. In 2013, Dr. Gunathilaka was appointed as a special advisor for a multitude of projects regarding chronic kidney disease, which resulted in Dr. Gunathilaka being awarded by CSU for his research that was titled the Research Accomplishment of the Year. This was soon followed by the Occupational Health and Safety section of the American Public Health Association, granting Dr. Gunathilaka the International Award for his research. And more recently, in 2019, he received the award for his scientific freedom and responsibility from the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Dr. Gunathilaka is a devout Buddhist and consistently practiced meditation throughout his day. Although Dr. Gunathilaka has many responsibilities, he always makes time to come help the Sangha members, the participants, visit the temple, and help in any way possible, just like today. Now, Dharma Vijaya Buddhist Vihara Sunday School students, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Gunathilaka. Dr. Gunathilaka, the floor is now yours. Thank you.
Dr. Gunatilaka, your term now.
Right. Let me see. Okay. Terwan Saranai. Somebody needs to mute the mic. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do today is for the first 45 minutes, I will talk to you, the children, and I'm going to share with some exciting work that I did and some of the slides from some of the presentations that I did on the Sri Lankan Buddhist channel, and also towards the latter half of the lecture, I will share with you some really interesting research on neuroscience, on Buddhism, on meditation. May be a little complex for the children, but I'm sure you guys can follow me and feel free to ask me any questions on anything that you didn't understand. Okay. I'm going to start with a little question for you. Now, the question is, there are two identical twins. One is Anil, the other one is Sunil. They were brought up and educated the same way. They both completed high school. Anil is a Uber driver. Sunil is a bus driver, making several trips a day between Los Angeles and Disneyland. Now, both have worked on their jobs for 8 years. Now you have to make a guess. You can hear me well, right? All of you? Let me increase the volume. Can all of you hear me well?
Yes, we can.
So the question is, who has more brain power? Sunil or Anil?
I think they both have the same.
Okay. I like to hear some answers. Some more answers.
Anil.
Anil? Okay, very good. Anybody says it's Sunil? Now, who said Anil?
Ramito De Silva.
Okay. So, why do you think Anil has more brain power? Okay.
Because I think he's
Right.
probably been around more. While Sunil's a bus driver between Los Angeles and Disneyland, he might be going to like some other areas of California.
Very good. That's an excellent answer. You know what? They did this same research in London. And you know what? Was it Ramitu who came up with the answer? You know what? They came up with the same answer that you gave. They compared the bus drivers in well-established routes and taxi drivers, just like a Uber driver, who roam all over London, having to undergo. And now in London, unlike taxi drivers in Sri Lanka or most of the Uber drivers, they have to go through extensive training to learn how to navigate the unknown streets and places in London. So what they did was they did MRI scans, that is specialized X-ray scans on their brains, and to find out who has the bigger and more powerful brain. Sorry about the spelling there. They found that the drivers who had to navigate through all these different roads in London have much brain power than the people who have to go on the same route from one place to another. And what they found is also that the amount of increase in the brain power, actually the substance of the brain, was proportional to the number of years they served. In other words, if they work for a long time in these different complex environments, they had better brain power. This is a very important lesson for you kids. They did the same experiment, actually three or four different experiments on the same subject and came to the same conclusion. Let's start with the rats. This was done in University of Alabama. They got a set of rats and to let them play with all kinds of different toys. The other same group of rats, just like the other one, they kept them in the normal rat environment, nothing much to be excited about. The other rats, they kept them in a cage, no stimulation at all. No, they only had to sit there and wait. Guess when they checked on it, who had the best brain power? The rats who were playing with all these complex toys. And so then I won't go into details of all things. They did the same experiment with old grandpas and grandmas who live in nursing homes. The first group, okay, now you're going to answer this question for me, okay? The first group was given some kind of theater training. They were part of a play and they were acting and they had lots of things to do. The other group, the same group of old grandmas and grandpas, they had to just observe passively some art. The other ones had no engagement, no, they were sitting on an armchair and just nodding away. Who developed the most amount of brain power? Yes. Yes, it's okay to be wrong. Who developed the most amount of brain power?
The theater training.
The theater training group. Now, same in the group of rats, the rats who were playing with lots of complex toys, they had the most amount of brain power. So the lesson that you learn is the more, if you don't learn anything else, this is very important, kids. If you don't learn anything else, the more you use your brain, the more powerful it becomes. You have a very powerful tool in your hand. The more you use your brain, the more powerful it becomes. And we doctors call it neuroplasticity. It looks like a big word, but let me explain it in very simple terms. You know how we can make lots of things, toys out of plastic, right? We can get plastic and make a car, we can make a boat, or we can make a dinosaur, or we can make a Barbie doll. So in other words, we can mold or shape plastic into various different shapes that we want. In the same way, if we can mold or shape our brains to be very effective, more powerful, and they used to do that mostly during injury, like when you become paralyzed, when blood supply to the brain is cut off, and when the nerve cells die. They used to get them to exercise and different programs of exercise. They used to kind of help them to build or reshape the brain. But now, today, we know that the same concept applies very much to the normal brains. We can change our brains with meditation. And that's the key word here. To give you a little insight into the human brain, it consists of trillions, billions and billions of cells like this one, and each of these cells form connections with other cells. Now, if you work on a very complex, now again, meditation seems to be not very complex. You sit down but It is one of the most complex things tasks you do, and something that you can do at home very easily. The Montes will tell you, the more you meditate, the more connections they develop with these nerve cells. So we have almost 80 to 100 billion of those cells in our body, and it is your task to make use of those cells and exercise your brain in not only with meditation, with many different ways, but the best way to make connections and develop your brain power is through meditation. Okay, it's like when you engage in an exercise program. You know that when you do exercise, you develop your muscles, right? Now, just developing your muscles without developing your brain is of no use. You really have to think of developing your body. The exercise is good, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But you need to exercise your body, and you need to exercise your brain as well. The best way to exercise your brain is to do meditation. It exercises the brain in the same way an aerobic class exercises the body. The benefits of both are tangible and comparable. Complete fitness plan includes doing physical exercise and doing mental exercise. The mental exercise part is the meditation. The other thing to remember is, just like in physical exercise, just like in a physical fitness program, the person who meditates often can build on previous sessions, just like what we do in exercise, previous sessions, and achieve a meditative state more quickly and more deeply. So, students, you have already got your assignment for homework to do for the next several months, and I can see Bante Kenanda smiling. He's going to teach you all about meditation. Now, this is a very complex slide, but I will tell you, this is about if you really want to know what a SPECT scan is. But leaving out all these things, I will tell you, a SPECT scan is a specialized X-ray of the brain that will help you to look at, you can visualize with those X-rays the blood, or see the blood flow into different areas of the brain, and you can really know which part of your brain is working at a particular time. Now I'm going to show you some very interesting pictures. This picture on top is the normal healthy brain. Look at it. The surface is very smooth. There are no holes in it. Look at this one. This is a brain full of all different kinds of holes. This is an unhealthy brain, children, and this is the result of taking or using alcohol and drugs for a long time, and this is the brain of an alcoholic or people who have abused alcohol and drugs. Now, do you realize why that every time we observe the 5 precepts, we say, Suramereya Madhyapama Dattana Veramani Sikkhapadan Samadhyana. That is because if you don't, and if you break that precept, This is what is going to happen to your brain. This again is the brain compared to of a marijuana user gain all these drugs to a normal healthy brain. Now I'm going to show you a very interesting concept. That interesting concept is this is the brain of a person aged 20 years. Can you see how that's what how your brains look like, children? Can you see how the brain of a 50-year-old person looks like? This is the brain of a 80-year-old person. Now, do you realize why your grandpas and grandmas have their glasses on their forehead and start looking for their glasses all over? Because they become forgetful. Some of their brain cells, neurons, are going to break down. I'm using very simple terms, and they begin to develop holes. Now, the next question is for the older folks who are watching, how can you prevent this process? I will talk about it in a minute, but I will give you a little hint. You can slow down or reverse this process by, anybody wants to complete the sentence, and I'll go into it in more detail.
Maybe by meditation and just brain exercise.
Bingo! You got it right. Now, do you realize why the Bantes don't get so old? They don't. When they meditate, they can slow down or reverse some of these changes. I'll come back to that in a minute. And they even, this is a different kind of yogi meditation. They even looked at the brains before and after meditation. And after meditation, all these kind of holes began to fade away. And now I was giving this lecture to some of the doctors in Sri Lanka, and I asked these are the three brains of three individuals who are 60 years old. And I asked them which brain you want to have. Of course, this is the one that you have. But the point here, kids, is that, children, is that if you are, that's why I said both physical and mental exercise is very important. The brains of those people who are really obese, who are really fat, who don't do any exercises, who become a couch potato, and when they put on a lot of weight, they start snoring, they are getting not enough oxygen to their brain when they are really snoring hard when they are in deep sleep. We call that deep sleep apnea. When you have this kind of disease, can you see how many holes you develop? And this is really someone who has lost most of their brain due to a disease that we call Alzheimer's. And can you see the amount of big holes in their brains? Okay, it's your turn now. You're going to play doctor, and I'm going to show you the scans. Who wants to volunteer? Is this a healthy brain, or is this a unhealthy brain.
This is an unhealthy brain.
It's unhealthy.
Unhealthy, very good actually. This is the brain of somebody who has abused drugs and alcohol. All right, one. What about this?
Unhealthy.
Very good. See, you can become a doctor very easily. You guys are really good. Tell me this one.
It's healthy.
Healthy.
Very good. See, now you can diagnose pretty well now. And now I'm going to show you a little bit more and then get on to other areas. But think like this. If you harbor or if you carry bad thoughts in your mind, remember that stanza from the Dhammapada? Mano Pubbangama Dhamma. I'm sure the priest will teach you that. But this is what happens when you carry all kinds of bad, hateful thoughts in your mind. And this is someone who practices loving kindness meditation, who is grateful, who is compassionate, who carries all kinds of good thoughts in your mind. So you now have got the recipe to build the brain that you want. Are you with me? All right. In neuroscience, in the science related to the working of the brain, we have a concept called use it or lose it. Now, you remember the guy I showed you. Now, this is what happens when you use your muscles all the time and you build them up. On the other hand, what happens if this guy becomes a couch potato, no exercise, nothing happens, and becomes totally lazy? He will lose.
Oh, there must subject है ना.
Oh, I know that. Okay, you can hear me, right? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay. So when he stops exercising and becomes a complete couch potato, all these muscles are going to fade away due to disuse. The same principle applies to your brain too. So if you use your brain, if you meditate, if you use it for other purposes, maybe it could be music, it could be Sudoku, it could be other ways of stimulating your brain, and your brain will become very, very active, and all the nerve cells in the brain will be working. When we develop new habits, again, you develop very positive habits. We rewire our brains to adapt to those new circumstances, and we call that positive neuroplasticity, or we develop good brain connections. On the other hand, when you learn, you can learn to be lazy too. Poor motivation, no, you don't want to do anything. Oh, I'm tired, I can't do anything today. And you slow yourself down, what will happen? The nerve cells in the brain They have lots of electrical currents going on. They don't fire. Those currents are not going there. They don't fire at all. And they fail to link with other brain cells. And what will happen is that your brain is going to, virtually, I'm telling you, it's going to shrink. And those connections are going to just fade away. All right. This is the most important recent finding on meditation. There is a neuroscientist by the name Sarah Laser she's now attached to the Harvard Medical School. I will tell you her findings. Remember, I asked you the question while more about how can you reverse the changes that happen with aging on your brain. Most people see their brain, the surface part of the brain shrink when they age. She did research and found that 50-year-old, this is her statement, not mine. 50-year-old meditators in her study had the same amount of brain matter as those who were 25 years of age. She did this. The participants in her study only meditated for 27 minutes a day. But they have found very significant changes if you meditate for 15 minutes a day. The story of Sarah Laser is very, very interesting. She was studying what is happening inside the cells as a molecular biologist, and then she used to be an avid runner, and she had a massive running injury, was in lots of pain. Meditation helped her. So after she got her PhD from molecular biology, she said, I would rather do research on meditation than on bacteria. So she was looking for some place to join and get trained in neuroscience. She joined the psychiatric department of Mass General Hospital, and that's when she started doing the research on those meditators. She used a specialized imaging technique called functional MRIs. It's like a big MRI scanner they use to see how the brain works and take special pictures of the blood flow to different parts of the body. And so this is Sarah Laser. This is her word. The brain is remarkably responsive to experience. We subject the brains to different experiences. The brain begins to develop. And keep in mind, if you're a whiner, if you always keep complaining about, ask your brain to worry and it will get better at worrying. Ask your brain to pause or just do nothing. It will get better at doing nothing. Brain actually remodels, like when you get the plastic and make any kind of model that you want, or get Play-Doh and make any kind of model you want. Brains actually remodel itself based on what you ask the brain to do. In other words, you can train your brain, and that is the main message of my lecture. Now, if you meditate, if you do complex things and you are studying maths all those things help you to develop the brain to become one of the, you will, if you continue on this path, you will be one of the greatest scientists. Why am I telling you that? We call that process the Einstein Find Your Brain. And now I'm hoping I can share this video with you. I don't know how much the technology will allow me to do that. Let's see. Can you see it? Somebody say yes.
Yes, yes, we can see.
Okay, good. Okay, so Einstein was one of the greatest scientists to walk on the surface of Earth. And he had a brain. He was lucky in that he had 20% more neurons or nerve cells in the brain. But we know that through meditation, through other complex activities, you can develop more brain. And this is the result of developing more brain. Sorry. Let me see how I can get back to my, okay. Now, forget about Einstein. This is a group of kids who from a little school who developed, who won the academic decathlon. You know, you guys hear about it in your school. That's the best that could, they became world champions 4 times. And when somebody asked them, what was the secret of your success? They said one word, and that was meditation. Isn't this enough, children, for you to go get started on meditation? I'm sure some of you are doing it. I'm showing you how much there is interest on meditation in the whole world. Time Magazine recently had one full issue on meditation. Okay, and here is one more, sorry. Scientific American looked at the neuroscience of meditation. There was another special issue of Time, and I can go on and on and on. Here are some of the CEOs, the top guys in some of the top companies in America. This is what Intel guys had to say. They said there's no price tag on Clear Mind and launch a mindfulness program. In Aetna, we are using meditation and we are using CEOs management by mantra. That means they are doing meditation. General Mills, the company that makes most of the cereals, and Dow Chemical that makes all the chemical companies, the US military, and even they have a lot of programs in schools. This is in the US, okay? Outside, the London Transport is using it. The Cabinet Office in the UK is using all these other places. They are using meditation. And guess what? These are kids who are meditating, and many schools have now begun to use meditation. And in Sri Lanka, Reverend Ubeyidekama Dhammajiva Thero, he has started this thing called the Satipasana, or the meditation school, which has become a huge success in Sri Lanka. This is the same slide that Sarah Laser was saying, that most people see if you meditate, a 50-year-old meditator in the study has the same amount of brain matter as a 25-year-old. The reason I repeated this slide, children, is because I want to give you some homework. After you finish this lecture, I know you guys are going to meditate. It's easier to teach kids than to teach adults, but you have some work cut out for you. Get your parents to meditate, get your parents to exercise. Otherwise, they will develop those big holes in their brains, and you will have a lot of problems in taking care of them when they become so forgetful and all that. You still have to do it, and that's the Buddhist tradition. But if you can prevent it, that's the way. Exercise your body, exercise your mind. And your homework is to get your parents to do that. Now, I said that good. For about 45 minutes, I spoke to you. You know your task. And oh, by the way, I wanted to tell you something else. Can any one of you children guess how much these companies spend for one employee per year to help them to develop a meditation program or help them to meditate? Make a guess. Roughly, how much would these companies be spending per employee for meditation on the average? It's okay to be wrong. It's all right. Make a guess.
Maybe like $100 or $1,000.
$100. Any other guesses?
I don't know, 120?
How about
$1 million.
$120? $1 million? No, I'm talking about one per employee.
A couple of thousand.
You are on the dot. Actually, they calculated the average amount these companies spend to train their employees on meditation, because they know that it's going to improve their brain power and they're going to get it back anyway from their employees. So they spend as much as $2,000 on the average per employee on meditation. Okay, so my children, you are getting $2,000 worth of meditation from the Bhantes, free of charge. You better appreciate it and you better make use of it. Okay? Now, for 45 minutes, I spoke to you, and I'm going to switch gears a little bit and make things a little more complex and take you through some of this real intense research that is going on in the field. Matthew Ricard is a Buddhist monk. He's from the, I think he's from the US, who became a Tibetan monk under His Holiness Dalai Lama. And he works with all these neuroscientists, and this is Dr. Richard Davidson, and they are researching on different aspects of the meditation. They found that any children here who find it difficult to keep your attention on what is being taught in the class, or concentrate or remember things, hey, your answer is meditation. So they did a lot of research on these Tibetan monks. Actually, Dr. Davidson, he got these, they get them to wear a very nice cap. It's not a cap, it's little electrodes that it has 256 electrodes on this cap. Okay, and they get them to wear this cap while they are meditating, and they measure the blood flow and do a lot of research on this, what happens in the brain while they are meditating. Now, I'm going to skip a lot of the recent findings, and some of you are maybe even familiar with what they found, but there's one thing I want to focus your attention on. Don't get if you think this is complex, don't worry about it. All what there I want to say is, when you can measure the brain activity with this kind of waves, and they saw that these, what we call gamma waves, okay, what they did was they they got Dr. Richardson got 8 of the best meditators from His Holiness Dalai Lama, and they had different levels of experience: 20,000 hours, 40,000 hours, 60,000 hours, and they got. Now remember the last time you had the lecture on research that Dr. Gomika Udugamasuriya gave. He talked about a control group and an experimental group. Dr. Davidson got his students to do the same meditation as the Tibetan monks, and they made measurements. But you know what? They found that the students had only 1 or 2 occasional gamma waves. Okay. Now, gamma waves are the waves that we experience when we are solving a very difficult, complex problem. But these meditators who have been used to meditating for 20 hours, 20,000 hours, 40,000 hours, 60,000 hours, they just as they sit down, they are firing gamma waves at the rate. That's because they can focus their mind to a point where they can use that mind as a tool to look at very complex things that we can observe on our mind. Just keep this in mind, and we'll come back to this later. And recently, the Scientific American, which is a very respected journal, did a volume on consciousness, on a volume on the mind and about consciousness, what happens when we see things, what happens when we hear things, what happens when we smell things, and taste and feel and think about things. And they, after looking at all these different experiments, they named that volume of consciousness, just to indicate how much confusion, how much of an illusion, how much of a wrong, mistaken judgment that brain provides to us when we see things, when we hear things, now I'm going into, not children, don't get disheartened. This is nothing to do with your schoolwork, but this is the actual real the foundation of Buddhism. Okay, they very appropriately named this volume Chaos of Consciousness, and said that means there is a lot of confusion, there is a lot of delusion, there is mistaken judgment when we look at things, when we hear things, when we smell things, when we taste or feel or think about different things. Now, what these guys are discovering today, Buddha said very, very eloquently, very nicely, Buddha said, consciousness is an illusion. And there is a very nice book, if you want to read, the adults or the Bhantes, I am sure some of you may have read it, by Reverend Katakurunde Nyanananda. It's called The Magic of the Mind. The mind creates magic, and it acts as a magician, and it's Buddha gave the example that consciousness is delusion. Now, what exactly is the illusion? What you see is not what is really there. Now, what you see is a horse, but really it's a spatial arrangement of little few droplets of water in a cloud. Now, in the same way, this is not a land, it is the same arrangement of clouds. So you know what illusion is, and now we will look at the illusion of the mind and talk a little bit more, go a little bit more deeper into the foundations of Buddhist philosophy or the real crux of Buddhism, and we will, this is more for the adults, and I will reveal some things that probably you will be hearing for the first time for the Bhantes. And so, knowing what the illusion is, let's take a look at something, look at consciousness when we see what happens when we see things, and see what Buddha had to say about it. Now, when we were medical students, believe me, that was over 50 years ago, they told us the eye and the camera are very, very similar instruments. This is an old box camera. When you get the picture of the apple, it falls on the screen and it burns out the silver nitrate on the screen those days and creates an exact image of the apple upside down on the screen. Then they told us the same thing happens when we see the apple. The apple creates an upside down image on the back of the eye called the retina, and it registers all the features of the apple and sends it to the brain, and the brain sees this exact apple the same way. Nothing is further from the truth than that. This is why I say the science never, it gets refined. It doesn't get discovered, but it gets refined as we discover more and more things. So this is not the truth. So to see what really happens when we see an object, let's see what happens when we take this picture or take this person. For a moment, assume that it is your mother, or I will assume that it's my mother. Okay? Now the light that is reflected from her body gets on to the back of the retina. In Buddhism, they call it the Chakshu Prasada. Chakshu Prasada. And when it falls on this retina, this is a bigger picture of that retina. And there are these are the most important cells. These are called the cones and these are called the rods. Okay. It creates an electric current. Once the moment it falls on the eye, it creates an electric current that goes along the nerve, which we call the optic nerve, starting from the eye. It goes to the back of the brain, and it starts from the eye to the back of the brain, and you can see from there from the back of the brain, two other main streams of electric current start and go to the rest of the brain. Okay? And so seeing is a very complex process, and it stops actually what we call the eye, or the function of the eye stops at this point, and the rest of the process of vision is what happens inside the brain. So when that electric current goes to the back of the brain, we call the visual cortex, or we call, and in this back part of the brain, in Sinhala we call it the Kudamule, and two other electric currents go up this way, one goes this way, and keep in mind, when it comes to this point, these cells are able to detect. This is very important for us to understand, for the Bhantes and for us who really study Buddhism. When it comes to this point, the rods and the cones can detect only the color and the shape of the body. We have not yet recognized, I have not yet recognized this as the mother. But it is only after the electric currents only after the electric current goes from here to the back of the brain, and when the other currents come here, they bring back, or they integrate, they synthesize, they bring back all the memories that I have about the mother, and that is how I see. You notice that I'm using the word I. Okay, that is how I see her as my mother. Okay, so it's a very complex process, but it integrates all that, or draws back everything and put it together to create the picture of the mother for me. Okay. All right. Now, remember, for me, when in my brain, I have the memories that will bring back and create the picture of my mother in my mind. On the other hand, my father does not see her as his mother. He sees her as his wife. My uncle's mind. Now remember, we are all seeing the same body, same person. My uncle sees, when he sees that picture, he sees her as his sister. My next door neighbor, depending on whether she's angry with my mother or whether she's friendly with my mother, she sees her as a friend or a foe, or somebody who is, or her enemy. On the other hand, think of a cannibal who is used to eating human flesh. If he sees that picture for the first time, he is not thinking about any relationship. He's thinking about a completely different thing. He thinks of her as, the cannibal sees this as a tasty meal for the entire tribe. So do you see how we see the same object very differently, depending on our memories, depending on what we have created in our mind? Okay. Now I'm going to go to this one. Buddha looked at this process and he analyzed it beautifully. First he said, Kinnan Sangati Passo, I, the object, and the I consciousness create what's called contact. The I, the object and the light, and the excitement of the back, the retina, creates contact. Now remember, at that point we have not recognized I have not recognized it as my mother. Then depending on contacts, now when those two streams that I showed you goes to the front of the brain and collects all the memories that's in my mind, it creates certain feelings. The love that I have for my mother, the good things she did for me, how she fed me, how she took care of me, all those feelings now come into my mind and I recognize her as my mother. And Buddha said, young, with contact arises feelings, passa paccaya vedana. Then Buddha said, young vedeti tang sanjanati. What you feel, you know, you become, you recognize, you try to understand. What you feel, you recognize. Then Buddha said, young sanjanati tang vitakketi. Once I recognize her as my mother, I'm looking closely at her and saying, oh, she has lost weight. She don't know whether she has had a medical back checkup. She's with my brother. I don't know whether my brother is taking good care of her. I'm thinking, and is she really feeding her well? Then once you know, you start exploring about it. And once you start exploring, you create a lot of mental proliferations. Actually, they're called intoxications. And Buddha said, once you know something, you start thinking about it. And once you start thinking about it, you create what is called prapancha, or a series of we become really attached to it. We become intoxicated by it. We actually create our own video clip in the brain about what we saw. This is a little complex, but we see things. There is only contact, and it's very important to understand that the moment the light touches the eye, that is the end of the process of vision. Really, the rest happens inside the brain. So with contact arises the feelings and the knowing and the thinking and forming all kinds of little stories or mental proliferations, or we are in fact creating our video clip about what we have just seen, and we do the same thing for all other senses. When we smell something, again we create our own video clip. When we hear something, we create our own video clip. When I have told about the visual map. When we touch something, we create our own visual map. So the brain, our brain is full of those visual maps that we have collected, actually not only in this birth, but mostly in this birth, about what we have seen, what we have smelled, what we have heard, what we have touched. Our brain is full of those prapancha sankara, or little stories that we have created by seeing, by hearing, by smelling, by tasting, and by touching things. Okay, so that is what we call prapancha, and today I'm explaining this for the first time, Bhantesh and my older friends. Today, for the first time, we know that there are those prapancha sankaras. We call them astrava, we call them klesha, and these are little video clips. These are little things, stories that we have created by seeing, by hearing, by smelling, by tasting. And today we know that these prapanchas are collected in this back or the posterior part of the brain that is called the posterior hot zone. The moment, one more thing, the moment we create those little video clips, every story that we create, every prapancha sankara that we create, in other words, we are doing a little video, little story in our mind. Every time we see, every time we hear, every time we taste. And that story has a main actor. Who is that main actor? Me. Remember, I told you, I see my mother. When I say that, I am creating a story in my brain with me as the main actor, which the person I see as another actor, my mother. Then comes the concept of me and mine, and I am now seeing or hearing, I am seeing her through my eye, which is a part of my body. And so now I have already created a very nice story about my mother. And so when I created that video clip, have you now, children, you have seen and others have seen these people who go to a movie theater and they cry and they laugh. And when you watch a teledrama or a soap opera, you cry. Why? It's not true, but you are still living within that whole experience. You are taking it as real, and if your favorite actor or actress dies, you cry. And all of you have cried by seeing a video, by doing a movie. And if you are not willing to go in and live in this video clip, you're not going to enjoy the movie. You are not going to enjoy the video clip. But that is what we all do. And then the moment that we create this video clip inside our brain, now we are ready for all the suffering that comes with it. When the mother gets get sick. The video about the mother gets, we are now living in that little video clip. We get sad because we want her to be well. And when the mother dies, my video in my story, my main actress has now died and I'm crying. So do you realize, this is little deep Buddhism, guys. Do you realize that when the mother dies or when something happened to her, when you cry or when you become sad, it's we project it to the mother and say the mother is sick and that's why I'm crying, but it's not really we are crying about the mother, we are crying about the prapancha or the sankara, the ashtrava, the klesha that we created inside our brain. Okay, so this is where these things reside, and in fact, there is a lot of new research that is going on in this area in the university, in the sleep lab in the University of Wisconsin. They got 46 volunteers to wear those caps, and they were monitoring them when they were dreaming. And when they were, this is one of the latest discoveries in neuroscience. When they were dreaming, this whole area, the posterior hot zone became active. And when they, with the electrodes, when they could, by looking just at, by just looking at the activation of this area, they could predict. Now these people are sleeping, but they could predict whether they were sleeping or not. So what they did was they woke them up and asked, what did you dream? And they could even predict some of the area based on the area, what they were really dreaming about. So the conclusion that they came into was that dreams, this is what we call mental objects or Dhamma, dreams recruit the same brain regions or that we experience during wakefulness or during when we are awake, and the same contents are used in dreaming. So they were able to link the brain activity that is happening during dreams with similar brain activity that's happening when they are awake. So this research is paving the way for a brain map that actually tells us where these prapancha, sankara, klesha or ashtrava are residing in the brain. This is the newest research that I have been looking at, putting together what's happening in neuroscience with really in Buddhism. This is a concept that I have put forward. And I want to end my presentation with a little video clip just to show you that we not only, when we meditate and when we do things or create karma, good karma or bad karma based on these video stories, we not only do it in this life, we take whatever the learning that we learn by developing our mind in certain, if you develop it really well. So the point is that one more point. Let's see, I didn't look at Satipatthana. Okay. All right. Coming to the end of my presentation, in the Satipatthana meditation, what I gave you really now is the theoretical background or the information, the knowledge of what is really happening in the brain. Remember last time when Dr. Bhumika's lectured, Dr. Bhante Piyananda said about the Suttamaya Nyaya, that's what you hear and that's what you learn from it. Now, once you know this framework, once you have this framework, what you learn from what hearing my lecture and the others listening to Dhamma, you have to calm your mind and sharply focus on how we create those video clips. And that is why we say you need to calm your mind or do the samatha meditation before you really see what is happening. So, like those meditators, if you really calm your mind, you can, this is, the red ones are really my hypothesis, so don't confuse that with Buddha's teachings. The intense meditation leads to a multitude of gamma waves. Now you are in a really focused point to look at what is really happening in your mind, to clearly begin to see what happens, and that leads to the development of unshakable wisdom. That is what we call prajna, and the ultimate development of that is enlightenment. You had a discussion last time. So once you really understand this process, you know that what you're getting attached to is not the person outside. You are getting attached to what is inside your brain, and that is why they say Sankapparabo Purisasakavo. Let's see whether I had a slide on that. No, I don't think. That's all right. No. All right. So I want to end this by playing a little video clip to show that once you develop your brain, you take it, you can take it, you will take it to your next level, next birth. Listen to this child who is 5.5 years old.
The sound ඇහෙන්නේ නැහැ.
සරත් ඇහෙන්නේ නැහැ වගේ.
ඇහෙන්නේ නැද්ද?
නෑ.
වොලියුම් එක ඇහෙන්නේ නැහැ.
නෑ වොලියුම් එක එන්නේ නැහැ.
අනේ එහෙනම් ඉන්න බලන්න.
Can you play the real YouTube? I think then should be okay.
හරි
From your computer.
පොඩ්ඩක් ඉන්න. ඔයා දැක්කනේ ළමයා? Let me see whether I can. ඇහෙන්නේ නැහැ නේද?
සද්ද ඇහෙන්නේ.
ඇහෙනවද?
නෑ ඇහෙන්නේ නැහැ.
හරි කමක් නැහැ. ඉන්න මම බලන්න මේ.
ෆෝන් එකේ නම් තියුණා.
හරි. No, it's going to that on. That's okay. What I really want to show you is that this child who is 5.5 years old, and the way she preaches to her father, you really, really think that she is someone who has at least in my mind, there is no doubt that she has achieved so on. It's available on YouTube. I can give you the link, but this is amazing because you carry on the training that you developed in this life towards your future lives as well. Okay, that's the end of my lecture. Maybe I have a minute or two if you have questions, and let the Bhantes control it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarath Gunatilaka. We really appreciate you. One of our students, here I can see Sandhini. Sandhini, can you give a vote of thanks? Thanks to the Dr. Sarath Gunatilaka.
Yeah, of course. It was very interesting. It's very interesting to learn about the mind because it's obviously such a big part in who we are. And I think we tend to forget to take care of our minds and take care of our mindsets and learn to build on them, and it's a good reminder that it's a big part of becoming better and bettering yourself and even bettering everyone around you, because it can help everyone else as well, because it changes your attitude. And like you were saying, I was thinking about, like when you were saying exposing yourselves, like the rats exposed to like different toys and how differently they acted. It's kind of like almost like traveling and experiencing more. Like it will broaden your mind and make you more like grow empathy and sympathy, and it's definitely a big part of like building on yourself. So it's like, thank you for introducing that to us and reminding us how important it is.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gain. We are very grateful to you, appreciate, and not only as our wonderful devoted Dayaka, same time our doctor. Whenever any monks need in this part of the world, first going to Sarath Gunatilaka. His advice is more important than others. Thank you again. Not only that, I had to mention something. In Sri Lanka, many decades over, maybe 40 years, continuously one of his scholars, different fields, brought to this country and trained, then sent back, including my own brother Ranavira. He came maybe 30 years ago. Dr. Sarath Gunatilaka brought here and trained him at his university, sent back. That way he's have been doing so much work to also Sri Lanka.
Hello.
Thank you again. And next Sunday, by the way, our Dr. Niranjala Tilagaratna joined with Mihiri, going to teach and maybe sending for you some notes regarding another wonderful fundamental doctrine.